They say a man becomes dangerous the day he stops begging for love and starts giving himself the respect the world refused to offer for so long. And that's exactly what happened to him, because for years he lived as if love was something he had to earn, something he had to chase, something he had to bleed for, even when all he ever wanted was to be understood. But every time he opened his heart, they saw it as a weakness. Every time he stayed loyal, they took it for granted. And every time he stayed silent, they assumed he was okay, but he wasn't, was drowning silently in the very ocean he kept others safe from, and no one ever noticed, because he smiled through it all. He lifted others while no one lifted him, and while they were busy finding someone better, he was busy trying to be enough for people who never planned to stay. And in that war between his love and their indifference, he lost himself piece by piece, smile by smile, day by day, until one night something in him Jeff snapped. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. It was still, it was sacred. He just decided to stop chasing people who only loved him when it was convenient, and to stop proving his worth to people who were blind to it. He sat in silence and asked himself the question that changed everything. What if the love you're chasing from others is the love you're supposed to give yourself? And that one thought hit him harder than any heartbreak ever had. He realized he'd been betraying himself just to feel worthy in the eyes of those who never saw him to begin with. He was writing novels in people's lives when they only gave him footnotes. He was building temples in hearts that had already locked their doors. He was loyal to those who couldn't even spell the word, and he was tired of it all, tired of showing up for people who never remembered his birthdays, tired of being strong for everyone and weak for himself, tired of waiting for validation from people who couldn't even value his presence. So he changed, not because someone saved him, not because life suddenly got better, but because he chose to save himself. He looked in the mirror, and for the first time in years he didn't see someone broken or lost or unlovable. He saw someone who was exhausted from carrying the weight of everyone's expectations. He saw someone who had scars that told stories of survival, not defeat. He saw a man who was done shrinking himself to be liked, who was done chasing temporary comfort, and finally ready to build permanent peace. He didn't make a big announcement. He didn't post a quote on social media. He didn't tell anyone. He just moved differently. He stopped answering texts that drained him, stopped showing up in places where his presence wasn't appreciated, stopped explaining himself to people who had already made up their minds about him. He replaced guilt with boundaries and replaced begging with silence, because sometimes your growth will offend those who benefited from your lack of it, and he was okay with that. He started waking up early, walking in silence, journaling his thoughts, lifting weights, not just for strength, but for clarity. He started healing, not for them, not to show anyone, but for himself. Because he finally understood that peace isn't something you find in others. It's something you create within yourself. And every time he sat with his loneliness, he realized he wasn't really alone. He was just finally in the company of the one person he had abandoned for too long, himself. And in that solitude, he found power. In that silence, he found answers. In that heartbreak, he found purpose. And the man who once begged for love was now building a life so full, so grounded, so powerful, that the same people who once ignored him now watched him in silence, wondering how he rose from ruins they left him in. They said he changed, but no one asked why. No one asked what it cost him to finally choose himself over people who kept choosing others. No one saw the nights he cried in bathrooms, the mornings he woke up feeling unwanted, the texts he never received, the calls he kept hoping for, and the memories that haunted him in silence. But he carried all of it and still chose to be kind, still chose to rebuild, still chose to rise, because He learned the hard way that people don't respect you until you respect yourself, and love doesn't feel like chains. When it's real, it feels like wings. And he was done chasing people who clipped his every time he tried to fly. Now he walks slower, speaks softer laughs, a little deeper, and lives a lot freer. Because he knows that peace doesn't come from being accepted, it comes from accepting yourself. And if he has to walk this journey alone, he will, but he'll never again beg for a seat at tables. He had the power to build himself. They used to call him emotional too, sensitive to soft, but they never knew he was simply someone who felt deeply. Someone who loved fully, someone who gave everything and asked for nothing, but that man is gone. Now, not because he became cold, but because he became wise, because he understood that his heart isn't weak, it's rare, and it deserves to be protected, not played with. So, if you ever find him distant, don't mistake it for bitterness. He's just choosing himself now. And if you ever wonder why he doesn't call anymore, it's because he learned that silence is often louder than 1,000 explanations. And if you ever think he changed, you're right, he did, but only because life forced him to, and he's finally okay with being misunderstood. Because peace greater than proving, and maybe, just maybe, one day they'll realize what they lost. But by then he'll be too far gone, not in anger, not in hate, but in healing, in wholeness, in peace. Because when a man stops chasing love and starts respecting himself, he doesn't just rebuild, he becomes someone unstoppable.